again, which I could interrupt at a certain time for a visit with you. It is, however, necessary that I return on time. Billy says, I understand, then you can really report more some other time. Semyaza says sure, but only if I'm still not finished with my remarks today. I still have some time. Billy says okay, but it's your responsibility. Semyaza says sure. Billy says good, then I am still all ears. Semyaza says thus, the following will come about even during the outflow of the harsh winter season of 1980 to 1981. It will happen with complete certainty that in Italy, the Etna volcano will begin its unusual activity again, which was no longer the case for several decades, while at the same and following time, an unusually high amount of aircraft hijackings will be carried out in many different countries. It will also be a time in which the aircraft hijackings will cause many deaths to be lamented over, as it will also be the case with the young people, who will revolt as terrorists and anarchists in many countries and occupy the buildings. This will increase far into the future, as will also neo-Nazism in many countries, whereby the governing forces of the earth bear the guilt for the development of these occurrences. They will allow a false humanitarianism and an unwarranted, light forbearance to be made toward the youngsters, terrorists and anarchists, building occupiers and revolters. In the case of neo-Nazism, it will behave similarly, for through the unreasonableness of the governments, even though the machinations of the last World War should have finally been placed into oblivion, it will be handled oppositely, however, and neo-Nazism will rise again with great force. The governments, filmmakers, and television producers will commit more madness in the coming time, showing the horrible atrocities of the last World War in films, movie theaters, and on television and make these accessible to the people of Earth. Through this, the minds of all of those people who are not in agreement with their governments and social orders will become excited, and thus they will take the atrocious films and reports as a model and form and establish new movements of destruction. This will already happen in an increased measure in the next year, so thus in 1981, while the following decades will bring the continuation of such. The relevant governmental bodies are sufficiently deluded not to realize that these machinations of constant and renewed representations of the last World War would have to be prohibited by all means, and also that the public orienting of youth revolts would have to remain omitted, while the regulatory bodies would have to reach through hard. Billy says then we can expect a great deal in the next year and in the next decades. Only one thing still doesn't click for me in regards to your explanations. While you were talking, I thought of something in regards to your words which you said earlier, when you said that by mid-year of 1981, still many things will happen which you would still have to explain to me before you can make further remarks about the American president. I have, indeed, been thinking about this man. I discovered in my calculations that what you said 10 minutes ago must still arrive before mid-1981, which is that the new U.S. president is to be killed. Semyaza says sure, that is correct. The date and time of this incident are already certain and unavoidable, but I explained to you that I want to give the coming events in chronological order. But if you're so impatient, then I would be glad to omit several upcoming events, which will still occur before the assassination attempt is committed against Ronald Reagan. Billy says, are they of such great importance? What are they? Semyaza says they are to be classified into the earthquakes that are only of incidental importance, primarily the continuous quakes that will occur in Italy and Greece. Besides this, there are some greater criminal and felonious facts are to be mentioned, particularly a large series of murders in America, which will cause outrage all over the world because by the middle of 1981, about 30 black children will be killed there, and this number will only be the official claim. The truth about the number of victims will be even more terrible, however. This case will move the whole world, whereby different other homogeneous or similar cases will only find marginal interest, including one of a similar nature that will occur in England. Billy says these things don't seem to be very important to me because in this world, these are incidents that have been on the agenda for a long time. The human being simply takes it to knowledge, says in faint indignation and feigned sympathy, terrible, terrible, and then it is soon dismissed and forgotten by him. Therefore, he does not give himself great thoughts about these things because they do not concern him. Only greater things such as earthquakes, wars, assassination attempts on prominent ones, volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, epidemics, atom bombs, and new deadly technologies, etc. will make a few little impressions on him, but he will also not do anything about even these few items because to him, everything has ultimately happened too far away and, thus, it doesn't affect him directly. Thus, everything falls very fast into oblivion even with him. Semyaza says then it would be quite unnecessary if I would continue to cite further occurrences. Billy says that isn't so because greater and world-moving events, even if this movement is only momentary, can be made known to the public and brought to its attention through information bodies. And since you mentioned these events to me already a very long time before their arrival, various people will think about them and, perhaps, be of a better sense through this. Semyaza says that is logical. Good, then I will give you the necessary information about the President of America. It will be on the 30th of March at the time of 9:45 p.m., in front of the Hilton Hotel in the city of his speech, where the President will be shot down by a student named John Hinckley. Ronald Reagan will suffer a shot to the wall of his lung, however, he will be healed surgically. His injury will not bring direct mortal danger for him, while some of his companions, however, will be brought into direct mortal danger, including a security officer and Reagan's press spokesman, among other ones. Billy says, aha, and what time do you mean with 9:45 p.m.? Is this according to American time or our time? Semyaza says the time corresponds to Central European time, and to be sure, the statement applies to the amended time. Billy says I don't understand that. Semyaza says you know, nevertheless, that the so-called daylight savings time plays a large role in the countries of Europe. Billy says of course, but Switzerland has wisely kept itself from this for about 40 years. Semyaza says sure, but in the year 1981, it will be reintroduced. Billy says that can't be true. That is idiocy, since such a change only brings tremendous financial expenses with itself and, moreover, absolutely no energy conservation, as the super clever imagine this. Semyaza says that is, unfortunately, correct, but the illogicalness of the people of Earth has previously had no end, not even before the dumbest stupidities. Billy says you have spoken a true word. Semyaza says should I now tell you more? Billy says of course, because I still do not understand some things. You said, nevertheless, that Reagan, shortly after his assumption of office, will encounter profound enemies who will make themselves available against him in order to assassinate him. But now, you said that he will only be shot down by a single man, a student. Therefore, the danger for the president has not yet passed, and above all, it is also not clear to me as to whether or not he will still die after the surgery on his injury. You did not express yourself over this clearly because you only mentioned the fact that the shot wound would not be directly fatal. Semyaza says as always, you are very keen. I actually only spoke of the direct shot wound, which American President Ronald Reagan will have to suffer, who can be healed again, however, by a surgical intervention lasting several hours. The health condition of this man after the operation will be in a satisfactory state, but then, some complications will arise, which will make a second operation necessary. The recovery for the president will only begin afterwards, according to which he can then exercise his duties again in about a 2-week time period. Still, during his recovery time, the security bodies will discover that the assassin was, indeed, an outsider, but one who maintains contacts with other elements that are determined to kill the president. In this connection, the arrests of certain suspects will then be made, which will not help